Ever since Rise of the Ronin launched back in March, many people have been making comparisons to Ghost of Tsushima due to the open-world nature of the two games and similarities in setting. In this video, we're going to be talking about why Rise of the Ronin might not be as far behind Ghost of Tsushima as some people were originally led to believe based off early reviews. When Ghost of Tsushima launched in 2020, it was met with universal acclaim and a completely baffled community gushing over the graphical limitations that Sucker Punch seemed to completely demolish. In contrast, Rise of the Ronin has launched with mixed criticism from the community, with many calling it a downgrade of Ghost of Tsushima. With Ghost of Tsushima launching on PC in just over a week, we're going to cover why that is not the case and how Rise of the Ronin is actually a better contender than you'd think against the 2020 Game of the Year nominee. As previously stated, the main reason for the comparison between Ghost of Tsushima and Rise of the Ronin is, of course, because of the historical Japanese setting with samurais and ronin. However, I think another large reason for the comparison stems from that they are both in the same genre, and they are both action-world RPGs, though both have a different focus. Ghost of Tsushima was a graphically unique game with an amazing art style paired with great graphical fidelity. It looks like a movie, and even plays like a movie with minimalistic HUD, and Sucker Punch's choice to exclude a lock-on feature in combat. Everything is made to look like an Akira Kurosawa film, and immerse yourself into the world of 13th century Japan. In Rise of the Ronin's case, instead of aiming for a cinematic style that immerses you into the world, the combat is meant to feel flashy and at a much faster, twitchy pace that Team Ninja is known for. The moves are less methodical than Ghost of Tsushima and more unrealistic, with attacks not humanly possible, providing some elements in the combat which blur the line between fantasy and reality. So whereas Ghost of Tsushima attempts to make the game look like a cutscene and push the limits of graphics and immersion in gaming, Rise of the Ronin focuses more on gameplay and feeling like a badass ninja. The main problem and reason why Rise of the Ronin is subject of mixed criticism is, of course, its presentation. The unfortunate truth of the gaming space is that graphics always sell. It doesn't matter if your game has the best content to ever exist, because if your graphics are subpar, people will assume the quality of presentation matches the quality of the content. This is marketing 101 and is a big reason why so many companies spend so much money on high-budget trailers. First impressions are everything. To give an analogy, if a master chef creates a dish with terrible presentation and posts it on a menu, people are likely to never try it, assuming it tastes as garbage as it looks. Conversely, if the dish appears as an exquisite delicacy unparalleled to any cuisine on Earth, people will want to try it out, led by the assumption that it's a great presentation correlates with an amazing flavor. The same thing applies to Rise of the Ronin. When people see the lack of graphical fidelity and washed out art style, they immediately assume the gameplay has as much effort put into it as the presentation. While it's definitely true that the graphics are completely disappointing, especially considering it's an open world game, Rise of the Ronin itself is actually an extremely enjoyable experience despite it itself. Ghost of Tsushima is still leagues beyond Rise of the Ronin when it comes to graphical fidelity and animations, even on its original PS4 release, while still being able to deliver good gameplay. However, I'm of the opinion that there is much more depth to Rise of the Ronin's gameplay than would first appear. And though the combat of Rise of the Ronin definitely isn't Team Ninja's best work, it can still create incredibly satisfying sequences with a lot of experience. Ghost of Tsushima opts for a simple combat system with a single weapon choice, a katana, as well as a stance system which makes Jin's attacks more effective against certain enemies. He gets a few upgrades from the skill tree to diversify his moveset with extra moves for each of the 4 stances, but it was all in all linear combat, which was extremely fluid thanks to the animation. The combat of Rise of the Ronin is some kind of middle ground between Wolong Fallen Dynasty and the Neo series, opting for something more complex. The basics include normal attacks, heavy attacks, guarding, and a key meter representing your stamina. Your moveset is diversified by the various combat stances for each of the 9 different weapons in the game. Each stance has up to 4 martial skills, which are special abilities which do significant key damage, meaning you can have up to 12 unique hot swappable skills in combat, as well as ranged options, your grapple hook, and of course character swapping. The entire system is based on the Counter Spark, a parry system to deflect attacks and cause enemies to panic, providing an opportunity to do some damage and reducing their key meter. Once that meter is depleted, you can do a critical hit dealing massive damage, with a couple unique animations for all 9 weapons, as well as critical hits with ranged weapons. Like Ghost of Tsushima, equipped stances are effective and ineffective against some enemies, forcing you to switch up stances in your weapon often in order to deal the most damage in large group fights. However, one thing I think Rise of the Ronin does better here is the character swapping mechanic in missions. It always makes you feel like you have the upper hand and can help you bounce back from bad countersparks or martial skills easily. It's always frustrating when you pull off a cool combo only to whiff it and ruin the entire sequence, so this system provides a good solution in those moments. Next, let's take a look at the content outside of combat for these two games. To start, let's go over what you do in Ghost of Tsushima. There was a fantastic main quest with a well-written tear-jerking script that could be called peak cinema. There were also fantastic side quests, mythic tales, which had you fight an incredibly unique boss to get some dopamine-inducing loot, my favorite part of the game. However, outside of that, the game didn't have much else to offer, with the combat and the smooth graphical animations in it mostly carrying its gameplay. The only other content available were some side quests, fox chasing, writing a haiku, bamboo splitting, and hot spring bathing. A basic open world is not anything out of the ordinary in the genre, but Rise of the Ronin outclasses Ghost of Tsushima in this aspect. Rise of the Ronin has all the stale open world aspects and side quests, but still manages to add more. In the open world, you get cat collecting, defeating fugitives to unlock new stances, photography, gambling, gliding races, horseback archery, and a dojo, where you can hone your craft against around 20 acquainted bonds in boss battles. And while you could say these aren't necessarily better than haikus or bamboo splitting, the fact is that the content doesn't end there. The bond system is a massive example of this, easily accounting for around 30% of a single playthrough. You can actually form relationships with over 50 characters in the game, and progress your relationships with them by giving them booze or going on their bond missions. Some of the bond missions are the best content in the game, providing interesting scenarios and backstories for various characters, like Izo Okada developing a character in Ryoma Sakamoto's bond quest. Upgrading your bonds yields you rewards like extra stances in combat and a bunch of RPG stuff that felt like a genuine progression in the game, unlike rewards from collectibles on the map. This leads us to the next big part of Rise of the Ronin, the heavy lean into RPG aspects. Ghost of Tsushima is relatively simple in this regard, whereas Team Ninja had the amazing template of Nioh 2 to go off of. There are a variety of skills which completely change how you approach combat, a bunch of customization for the 4 secondary stats for equipped items, weapon proficiencies for all 9 different weapons, and the scaling from your stats on each individual stance in the game. It's overwhelming, but in exchange, it makes the game more complex and thus longer lasting. Final thoughts. So all in all, is Rise of the Ronin actually better than Ghost of Tsushima? Absolutely not. Even with all the extra content and the deeper combat system Rise of the Ronin has, it's still hard to say that it can outclass a masterpiece like Ghost of Tsushima. Despite some of the open world being stale in Ghost of Tsushima, everything else had that signature Sony quality seen in the likes of God of War, Last of Us, and Uncharted that was almost good enough to make it 2020's Game of the Year. It does a better job than Rise of the Ronin in many areas. The music is incredible, the story is deeper and more grounded thanks to the preset character, and of course the graphics were considered incredible when it launched. However, Rise of the Ronin does put up a fight with more content and replayability at the endgame, making it a better value for its price while boasting a more customizable combat system. This is one of the reasons that this game is actually outselling the Nioh franchise in early sales, because it still has a lot of those things. Rise of the Ronin is simply held back by its graphics and had the potential to be much more than just another solid open-world RPG. Regardless of which you prefer, I hope this video convinced you that Rise of the Ronin is not the mediocre game that its art style and animations present itself to be. It's a game that one can thoroughly enjoy once you can look past the issues of presentation and genuinely find yourself becoming engaged in. However, just a reminder again that Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut is coming out on May 16th for PC, so if you've not played it yet because you don't own a PlayStation or live under a rock, make sure you have this on your list of games to pick up this spring. So what do you guys think of Rise of the Ronin for those of you out there that have played it? Isn't it much better than it would first appear? For those of you out there that haven't played Ghost of Tsushima yet, are you planning on picking it up on PC in less than a week? Let me know in the comments below.